Principles supporting learning-focused assessment and feedback. The fairness of assessment and the helpfulness of feedback are often thought about just in terms of the grading and feedback that accompanies marked work. This part of the process, the actual assessment phase, is just one small part of the overall assessment and feedback experience from the perspective of the student. In order for feedback to support meaningful learning, it is important to expand our focus from just the grades and comments themselves to what happens before and after this part of the cycle. The preparation phase represents the ways in which students gain a clear understanding of the assessment task and the criteria against which their work will be assessed. Principle 1. Clear and inclusive communication of assessment task requirements. Students are better able to learn through an assessment task where they have a clear understanding of what they are being asked to do. If students do not feel that they have had opportunities to fully understand the task expectations, this can contribute to a perception that assessment has not been fair. Ensuring that all students understand what is required of them is also an inclusive practice, as we know that some students are more likely than others to come forward and ask for further clarification, which can exacerbate attainment gaps. What this means in practice? Provide core assessment information in one place, for example using an inclusive assessment brief template or recording a video assessment brief or podcast. Provide opportunities for Q&A that involve all students, for example using seminar time or a Q&A webinar, rather than just relying on office hours for responding to individual queries. Principle 2. Opportunities to understand and discuss assessment criteria. Students are better able to learn through an assessment task where they have a clear understanding of how their work will be assessed. Assessment can also be perceived as unfair if students do not fully understand the criteria in advance and then cannot understand why they have received the grade that they did. Simply posting generic grade descriptors on SurreyLearn or publishing them in course handbooks without providing students opportunities to discuss and perhaps apply criteria is unlikely to support meaningful learning through assessment. Rather than constituting spoon-feeding, clarity around criteria can actually promote students' independence. What this means in practice? Provide students with opportunities to discuss criteria and seek clarification on what they mean. Provide students with opportunities to apply criteria through activities such as engaging with exemplars, peer assessment, or recording live marking screencasts. The assessment phase represents the process of marking and providing feedback information on students' work. Principle 3. Timely feedback that is designed to support future work. The timeliness of feedback is about more than just returning it on time. It is about ensuring that feedback comes at a time where students are able to implement the feedback to inform current or future work. What this means in practice? Consider when designing assessment tasks and planning deadlines how the timing of feedback return will enable students to use it for subsequent work. It is good practice to map all assessment deadlines and feedback return dates at a programme level and then explain to students how and where they can apply feedback from one assessment to another. Meet agreed turnaround times for feedback return and provide clear communication to students about when their work will be returned. Principle 4. Forward-looking feedback comments that focus on development. Research indicates that what students most want from feedback is guidance on how to develop their skills and their understanding in ways that support future work. What this means in practice? Talk to students to develop a shared understanding of what effective feedback means in the context of your discipline, and talk to them to find out what feedback they find most useful. Frame comments in ways that support learning, and encourage feedback seeking by finding out from students at the point of submission what form of feedback they would find most valuable. This is sometimes done through the use of interactive cover sheets. Finally, the consolidation phase. This supports students' learning after their work has been assessed by giving feedback meaning and relevance. Principle 5. Facilitating students' use of feedback by giving feedback a landing place. If feedback is to be meaningful and support learning, it should have a landing place. That is, there should be another task or assignment where the comments provided have relevance and can support students in developing their skills or understanding. What this means in practice: map assessment design at the programme level so that all module leaders have a good idea of the assessment tasks students will be completing before and after their own. This supports identification of landing places for feedback comments. Even if the most relevant landing place for a set of comments does not occur until late in the programme, there are activities that can support students in revisiting and applying feedback comments at a later time. And when writing feedback, signpost to students potential landing places where they can apply the comments you have provided. Principle 6. Providing opportunities for dialogue. Feedback comments can be difficult for students to decode, and their meaning may remain hidden to students. It is good practice to provide opportunities for students to discuss feedback and consider how they can apply it to future work. What this means in practice: provide clarity regarding how they can contact you to discuss their feedback. These conversations should be framed as supporting students learning through discussing feedback, not as a requirement to justify the marks. You can also provide opportunities for dialogue through a feedback webinar, providing generic cohort level feedback whilst answering queries as they appear in the chat. There is an accompanying document to this screencast which also includes embedded links to further resources, examples and literature that supports the use of these principles for learning-focused assessment and feedback.